Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ape Nation, your number one source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today I am taking a deep dive into something that I have never really talked about on the channel before. Back in 2014, prior to the release of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, a series of 3 short films were released online by the YouTube channel Motherboard, which I believe is a branch of Vice magazine. These 3 short films were made in collaboration with 20th Century Fox as a part of the marketing and build up to Dawn's release later that summer. Before I go any further though, if you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. So when taking a look at these 3 short films, each one of them takes place at a different point in the Planet of the Apes timeline. The first film takes place 1 year after the virus outbreak in Rise, the second film takes place 5 years after the outbreak, and finally, the third and final short film in the series takes place 10 full years after the outbreak and shortly before the events of Dawn. Now, as for my overall personal opinions of these 3 short films, something I do appreciate about them is that the 3 films tell 3 very different types of stories that all showcase different eras of the ALZ pandemic. Admittedly, I do think they all range quite a bit in quality, but the different styles of filmmaking is really cool, and just how much or how little they relate to the rest of the franchise is also pretty interesting to see. It's also just really cool to watch other parts of the world and to get to see other people in it that we've never met before who are impacted by the ALZ virus, and get to see just how much that impacts the rest of the world surrounding Caesar despite not being directly related to him or his apes or their story. When looking at the first film, Year 1, aka Spread of the Simian Flu, also known as Quarantine, directed by Isaiah Serrett, it has a bit of a low budget look that does come off as a bit amateurish when you first start watching it, but as you go through the rest of the short, it really works well tonally. What's also pretty cool is that the storytelling in this one is done primarily through visuals and music, and it's done very well. There's not a whole lot of dialogue throughout the entire short film. There's just a few small lines here and there. Speaking of that music, it is effective at first, but it becomes pretty grating and annoying as the film goes along, but it captures the horror of a deadly pandemic in minutes, and it has a very simple story that shines a spotlight on one of the millions of families who have been impacted by the ALZ virus.
Hey, take it easy, man. Take it easy. It's okay. Take it easy.
Are you sick?
Look, I'm not sick. See? Just take it easy.
Are you alone?
I'm with my daughter, okay?
Moving along to the next film, Year 5, aka Struggling to Survive, also known as All Fall Down, directed by Daniel Thrawn. This is my personal least favorite of all 3 short films. The story is even simpler than the first, and I think that is to its detriment. It isn't really about anything other than a brief spotlight on the day in the life of a mom and her child 5 years after the outbreak, and that's more or less it. And also, like the first film, it is low budget looking, but more so in a way that actually does hinder the storytelling and engagement in what's going on, and to be honest, it really just looks like a student film as opposed to someone using the low budget look to actually enhance the storytelling and tone. Unlike the first short film, this one does actually have a bit of a tease to the apes in the wider world that it's set in, and it is a pretty cool attempt at a moment towards the end, and overall it is probably the best part of the movie, but it's not enough to save it, and ultimately this is the most forgettable short film of the 3. And then finally you get to Year 10, aka Story of the Gun, or just simply The Gun, directed by Dylan Southern and Will Lovelace. And to me, this is by far the best of the 3 short films. It looks and feels and sounds the most cinematic, and it shows the Planet of the Apes world from multiple perspectives. Something I appreciate is how much this short shows the level of desperation that so many humans have gotten to at this point in the timeline, 10 years after Rise. You see the beginnings of of people losing their humanity. And maybe it's just me overthinking things or seeing things that aren't there, but you could look at it almost as the first phase of the human's de-evolution, in which we do eventually see what happens to them in Kingdom, where they fully lose all of their humanity. And also, to me, this is the one that most feels like it's actually a part of the Planet of the Apes world. The acting is really great, and the characters, for the most part, are pretty compelling. Not completely likable, but pretty compelling. I do think it's a little overly edited, and it uses too many fade transitions, and one specific scene has a lot of jump cutting that I think is really unnecessary, but the ending is fantastic, and again, just like the last film, does have a Planet of the Apes tease, but this one I think is a lot better done, a lot more effective, and it also leads pretty well right into the beginning of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I mentioned earlier how I thought the first short film really does a great job in capturing the horror of the ALZ pandemic. Something similar that I appreciate about this film is how it captures the horror of the actual apes from the perspective of the people just trying to survive day to day. While the ape tease, as cool as it is just to get, it's also just really cool because it gives us a perspective of the apes that really we don't get a whole lot of in the films. And for those who've seen my video talking about how a Planet of the Apes horror movie could potentially work, I think that specific scene does a good job at showcasing it. Overall, all three of them are worth watching, and they are cool to see as a Planet of the Apes fan. And ultimately, I just kind of really love that they exist. I think we should get more marketing like this in the future Planet of the Apes movies, and also just otherwise in movies in general. But specifically with Planet of the Apes, I think just getting to see little pieces of the rest of the world is really cool. It's a great and really unique form of marketing that brings awareness to the movie while also building excitement for fans and bringing them in for the build up to the film. I wish all three overall were a bit better, despite the fact that I do really like the third film a lot, but something I really appreciate is that they're made by lesser known, lower level filmmakers who were just fans who wanted to contribute to the franchise. And it also makes me wonder if we could ever get more short films like this set at different points in the Caesar or even post-Caesar era timeline, even if they are stories about humans. Obviously, it's harder to make stories about apes when you don't have a multi-million-dollar budget and you're just making a small, lower budget short film, but still, I think telling stories set in the world, even if you can't use apes or at least more than one or two shots of apes, is still something that I think is worth exploring. Speaking of, this is one of the few examples of on-screen media in the modern franchise to actually branch out of the medium of feature films. We don't have any TV shows, we don't have any animated series, we just have these three shorts and the two smaller scale video games, one of which, Planet of the Apes Last Frontier, which came out in 2017. I'm actually doing a playthrough of on the channel right now, but these three short films, along with Last Frontier, does well, or at least well enough, in confirming whether or not this franchise could actually work if explored beyond the films. And it only makes me wish we could see more original stories in this world told through different mediums. But I want to know what you guys think. Have you seen any or all of the Before the Dawn short films? If so, what are your thoughts on them? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Have you never seen them but are now suddenly interested? And what do you think of my points about whether or not we should get more things like this in the franchise, and whether these short films help or hurt the case for why we should get other stories that aren't necessarily films set in the Planet of the Apes universe? I want to hear everything you guys have to say down in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button. You can also now join the Ape Nation Discord server for daily discussions about the franchise. And if you're interested in seeing more of my videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one, so until then, goodbye.